Hi, my name's Sonja Schebeck. I'm a violinist and the founder and artistic director of the Freestyle Orchestra. People often ask, what is a freestyle orchestra? What does your season look like? Where do you perform, rehearse, live? So we're just going to show you. I'm going to pass you to my colleague, pianist, musicologist, researcher and aerialist Chanda VanderHart, who'll take you through some of our pre, mid and emerging from the pandemic projects. After that, we'll take you behind the scenes of our most recent summer workshops in Vienna, meet some of our members, show you some new skills and concepts that we've been exploring, and give you a sense of what it's like to be a part of this constantly moving and evolving collective. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Chanda VanderHart. I work with the Freestyle Orchestra as a pianist and aerialist. The Freestyle Orchestra is a performance collective, and in shorthand we're often referred to as a circus orchestra. That means we're all classically trained musicians, but all of us are interested in exploring and expanding the possibility of our personal and our collective music performance through different types of expression. We want to explore music performance as an inherently physical act, which is something that you don't get a lot of in formal conservatory training. That kind of serves as well to challenge the so-called high and low hierarchies in the arts. We very much enjoy blurring the lines between art and entertainment and playing with aesthetics that are not usually combined. Although there are different ensembles which combine music and movement, or music and circus, generally it's not the same artist doing both. And another thing that's kind of unique to freestyle is that we generally take music itself as the starting place. So instead of finding music to suit our best tricks, we work with the music and envision movement or circus or fire choreography or whatever within it, and then develop a catalog of physical vocabulary to amplify what we understand as the musical emotion and the musical gesture. We care about seeing what growing into these new types of interdisciplinary performers does to our own relationships with the music, with each other, and how it allows us to interact with the world around us in different ways. Our last project pre-pandemic was Concertos on Fire in 2019, where we performed our own reimagined version of Australian composer Ross Edwards' Maninyas violin concerto live at City Recital Hall in Sydney, Australia. One of the key things that comes up with Ross's work aesthetically is the significance that nature, particularly the rough beauty of the Australian bush, had for him. So in the third movement, we incorporated sort of a ritual feeling to reflect that, using smoke and instrumental improvisation in a circle and unchoreographed modern dance. Characteristic of Ross's style from this period is called his Maninyas style, and that's a style of the first and last movements. This style is characterized by an abstraction of kind of insect and bird songs, really quick tempi, angular or pentatonic melodies, and drone-like harmonies. So Ross describes this violin concerto kind of as an irresistible urge to dance just took over the music. One of the other things that Ross uses in the Maninyas style are these little cell-like motifs that he repeats really energetically, and we looked at these as kind of ecstatic, energetic motifs, and so a lot of the movement that we developed to accompany that were kind of explosive up movements and gestures. During COVID, the Freestyle Orchestra was actually very active. Classical orchestra performances in halls were completely impossible, and performing under anything like normal circumstances was actually illegal. And at the same time, shops were all closed in the city, and we wondered if we could maybe use those empty storefronts as stages somehow, like performing in a little picture box. The edges of the glass were like frames, and people could look into these miniature scenes, and at the same time, the glass was separating us from the audience, and that made it safe during the pandemic. We called it the Looking Glass Cabaret. So there is no funding or institutional support for any of this, but in standard freestyle orchestra style, we just launched a pilot project, made it happen. A bunch of us just got together, contacted some shop owners, and anyone who was keen on the idea became part of the impromptu pilot project that went over kind of Christmas time. The whole thing was tied together by a larger narrative, and we put QR codes in the windows so audience or passersby could see what was going on and also to be led through the city to the next series of performances. We put it all up on Instagram, and then we're able to get some city support and worked with the city of Vienna to create a more elaborate series of miniature scenes or happenings combining circus and classical music in small groups in May the following year. In 2021, we co-founded the Secret Garden Festival. There was an abandoned hospital courtyard in the heart of the city that wasn't being used, so we asked if we could make an outdoor festival there happen. We got food trucks to come, set up some benches, and organize different stations where folk music, circus performance, classical music, singing were happening kind of concurrently, and the artists who came were explicitly invited to crash each other's performances, jump on a hoop, or join in the musical jam or whatever. It ended up being a really beautiful atmosphere. We ended up getting some support from the Australian Embassy, and the proceeds then went to support the Sebastian Fund, which is an organization that combats youth suicide. We were also invited that summer to perform in large-scale city festivals like Kultursummer Vienna, which was great. They set up huge outdoor tents with rigging and sound support and everything in large outdoor spaces around the city. And for the first time, the Freestyle Orchestra had to figure out a 6-person live show, which was novel. We usually have much larger groups, but because of COVID, we couldn't fly in most of our people outside of the EU. And that forced us to grow as a group, learn new skills, figure out how to do a really big show with a much reduced number of people. So we mounted a sear wheel, we experimented with looping, even developed some new props for the experiment. So emerging from the pandemic, now that it's not such a disruptive, huge force, the Freestyle Orchestra has launched a few new projects. We joined forces with Opera Moderne, another interdisciplinary ensemble in Vienna that has a very different aesthetic and combines opera and burlesque. And together we created variete-style evenings under the name Vien.noir at a high-end establishment in downtown Vienna named Calais Dinner Club. We put in a rig, we called in new friends and old, and put together a couple of fantastic shows that are perfect for corporate or international clientele. This also gave us the opportunity to work in kind of a variete setting where we performed really individual acts. Since Vienna has not been as huge in the cabaret scene as, say, Berlin or New York, this also kind of filled a novel niche in the city. And I would argue that unlike Berlin or New York, our cabaret involves really highly virtuosic instrumental music as well as musical theater, contemporary and jazz. So beside that sort of corporate commercial scene, another way the Freestyle Orchestra has been interacting with the world fairly regularly in the past few years has been sort of enhancement of learning, especially coming from the circus community. We were artists in residence at the Western Australia Circus Festival south of Perth and have been the guest musicians at a festival in Sicily called Handstand Extravaganza, where we do everything from leading very creative warm-up sessions to extemporaneous performing for events, accompanying hand balancers or circus artists in their informal performances, or just amplifying the mood through music during the Handstand Olympics.
I could say three key things are handstand, my love and passion for hand balancing, the love for connection between people, authentic relating between people, and music. So I want to create something that could be like festival vibe and community style.
Where it all comes together.
Exactly.
Now.
For the first time this past summer, the Freestyle Orchestra has engaged in education. We were asked to participate in a summer school program teaching children movement and music, which was a very new experience. And it was wonderful to see how easily this combination came to kids.
Being an ensemble who are not all based in the same city, in summer 2022 we were finally able to meet for our first research and development workshop since the pandemic. Previously we'd focus on training specific skills that we knew we wanted to use for pieces we were creating or performing. This summer, however, our focus was only on training, research and development, without a performance as the end game. The aim was a general levelling up of our skills, with a strong focus on floor acro and group work, as opposed to fire and aerial. Whilst we often train in parks or gyms, we wanted to rig a safety harness, so we headed to Circus International Vienna, which over the years has been instrumental in providing space for our project to exist. We were able to fly in some remote members and focus on integrating some new ones as well.
My name is Pini and I play the cello. I come from a long line of classical musicians and I started playing cello as far back as I can remember. It's become an integral part of who I am and what I do. Freestyle Orchestra offers the opportunity to be creative in a way that's not just sound and music based but also movement based. And as I grew up I found myself more and more attracted to all kinds of movement-based arts, whether it be ice skating or parkour or classical dance or even martial arts or rock climbing. I started ice skating when I was a teenager and very quickly it turned into an obsession. And within a few years I was competing at nationals. Ice skating offered an outlet for my creativity that was quite separate from but also complementary to cello, in the way that I could create something and express myself in a way that was very different to the somewhat abstract forms of music that I was working with. Parkour began during an ice skating tour, and for me it became an extension of the freedom that I felt with ice skating. Parkour training enabled me to see all the things that my body could do, and also to run right up against those limitations and try and surpass them day after day. Being able to combine them all through freestyle on stage is a way of merging my passions that's very exciting.
My name is Claudia Cox. I'm a violinist, an acrobat and flyer, and an artist. I've been playing the violin since I was about 3 years old, and I started doing gymnastics around 3 or 4 years old also, both quite obsessively my entire childhood. I competed with gymnastics for nationals and competing for Australia. And eventually I decided to focus on music. I moved to Norway to study, and I'm living in Oslo. And it wasn't until I moved to Europe that I met up with Sonja, and she told me about this crazy project, and I was like, what? I can do both at the same time? What is this? and yeah, that was super liberating, and I found that really inspirational, and it opened up my mind to a whole new world of movement and art and scenography with music and using all the skills that were never really working together before. So last year I had an acrobatic accident where I fell 3 meters head first into a stage floor. It was quite serious and I got really lucky. So I'm incredibly grateful that it went the way that it went. It happened in an external project, not with Freestyle. So the majority of last year I was in recovery and healing. I had quite a heavy concussion and couldn't use my arms for some time. So to be back at it and to be back at it with Freestyle, I have no words to explain the feeling. But I'm really excited for the future and really hopeful and just ready to go, ready to keep going and going higher and creating art together.
Yeah, I mean, if everyone's really solid, I think it's going to be okay, right?
Everyone's solid, but not the same height.
Yeah.
So I found when going like to different heights, it was a lot bigger
different,
and it was
okay.
a little bit like shaky.
Yeah.
When someone's got you like I think here and here, it's like solid.
Yeah.
But like it's this weight shift and then there and you're just like
Okay. Yeah, so stick person with bent stick legs sometimes.
Yeah.
When you're together as a team, the possibilities are endless. Now instead of being one person doing gymnastics, I was a flyer with 3 other people creating this beautiful movement sequence, and that has felt really good and super eye-opening. I must say, after everything that has happened, to be back at it again feels so liberating, and I wouldn't change anything that happened for the world.
Hi, I'm Edoardo, I'm a multi-instrumentalist and composer, and I joined TFO from the very humble beginnings in which, remember, we were conceiving and rehearsing in a 10 square meters room in the middle of Vienna. I've been performing with them aerials, movement, acrobatics, and fire, and unlike many of the members, I did not come from a childhood in which I was doing movement, acrobatics, or Circus International. So basically I had to learn everything from scratch with the body and the mindset of a full grown-up. This is clearly a bit scarier because progressions are slower and there is more risk of getting injured and it's scary. But it also comes with a few advantages. For example, self-discipline wasn't a problem, and I think coming from classical music helped a lot in that, as well as being used to reflecting and analyzing the footage of what I was doing. And generally the risk factor has been taken partly away from training a lot of the time in safety with mattresses or with spotters, as well as with having people watching or reviewing the footage with you, so that I could progress faster with less repetitions. If there is something that I really wish I had known when I started, I think there are 2 things. The first one is that warm-up and cool-down are really, really important if you want to be able to walk the next day. The second one is that learning tricks is not different than learning a very complex passage. It takes time, and this means accepting that sometimes tricks takes way, way longer than you wish they would to build up. and accepting that means that then you don't overtrain.
So by now many of us are very comfortable in two highs and various other partner lifts. So our main focus of this workshop was to expand on where we can go from there, entries and exits, and playing around with different shapes. Another main focus was to develop standing and hand skills and transitions. As many musicians who came before us, a lot of us have worked with circus artists or companies and exchanged skills. Until now, however, our own work has remained music-driven. That is, we let the music dictate the skills. If we had a crazy trick that we didn't feel fit the music, we simply wouldn't do it. As well as incorporating instruments in almost everything we do. We still consider it useful, however, to touch on training more traditional circus skills such as Banquine and Toss, in order to gain some understanding of what is involved, whether or not we end up incorporating them in our own work or not.
I guess because you guys are different heights and stuff, you have to work differently.
Yeah, yeah. That looks a lot more like
It felt there was so much more momentum now.
When you're coming up, it gives you so much push.
Yeah.
But then when you come back down, we need to control it so much more.
As usual, if something goes well, somebody will eventually say, "And now with instrument?" Taking a little break from acrobatic training, I've always been interested to see what other materials could be used to play our instruments instead of bow hair, and how it would be to create a very long length, so that the way people move affects the way others can play. Also incorporating electronics, which are a passion of a lot of our members, including violist Nikita Gerkusov, and which is something we're exploring more and more.
My name is Antonio Chorbadzhiyski and I'm a cellist and movement artist. About 5 years ago, Sonja commissioned luthier Damian Krzemiński from Primo Sonoro to create a reinforced cello with the idea of being able to safely incorporate elements from acro stuff and balance involving a functional instrument. We are continuously researching ways to do this, including flipping off of it, hand balancing, lying on it, carrying people, creating new entries into previously learned tricks, and pushing the limitations of the instrument. As musicians, one of the main challenges is to fight our ingrained fear of breaking the instrument, which can get in the way of just going for it. While this instrument is very sturdy, it is not unbreakable. And as all cellos do, it has a natural bias to rotate on one side, which needs to be countered. In circus, there is the traditional role of a bass or strongman. And in freestyle, among other things, I tend to fulfill this role. A skill that we have wanted to achieve for a while is the 3-high. With our work, we often push outside our comfort zones. However, we're also mindful not to do things before we feel ready. It's a gradual process of thinking, wow, this is impossible, to feeling like, nah, let's give it a try. The last year particularly, we received some great input from friends in the circus world, and following Claudia's recovery, we all felt it was the right time to try. We were very happy to get it stable, in lines, and are looking forward to further training and developments.
So being in the Freestyle Orchestra is a lot of fun, but it's not a simple thing. Some of the difficulties with being in an ensemble like this have to do with the combination of skills that you need to have. So just to find classical musicians who are also either already skilled or very interested in working very hard to develop circus skills is not simple. There's also the obvious risk of injury, though nobody has been seriously injured during their work with Freestyle Orchestra. There have been injuries training externally that some have experienced, which is of course very stressful if you are a musician. In addition, as you might guess, we are scattered across the planet, from Sydney to Vienna to Oslo to Taiwan to Azerbaijan to London and Berlin. We all have other jobs, and it is rare that we can get together as an entire group to work really regularly on creation or even perform together. And because there's not the kind of space or institutional setting for an ensemble of this kind, at least not in Vienna, we also don't have the convenience of a rehearsal space that fits perfectly the combination of what we need to rehearse. So that means we end up being very creative and making any space a rehearsal space, from gyms to parks to apartment walls, and we do a lot of group work together in smaller groups and individually, and share a lot of videos online to keep everybody aligned in what we're working towards.